Over 2.1 million Georgians have already voted in the Georgia Senate runoffs, with the highest voter turnout rate in 6 Democratic-controlled congressional districts. Republican Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are hoping that President Trump's signature on that COVID relief package are going to help their prospects. But is it too little, too late? Political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein, joins me now for an update on these key races. So great to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Give us a little bit of a lay of the land here. What do you make of the turnout we've seen so far?
Well, it's huge, and it reflects that Georgians understand the high stakes of these races. The Georgians get that Senate control is on the line here in Georgia, and it's now more than 2.3 million. So it's a little bit off presidential pace, but not by much. And really, we're seeing huge turnout in predominantly Democratic districts in metro Atlanta, suburbs, and what they call basically rural Georgia, predominantly black rural Georgia counties. So it's a very good sign for Democrats at this stage. But just like in the November general, Republicans are relying on huge election day turnout. So they're banking on January 5th being the biggest day for them.
So President Trump has thrown a little bit of a wrench into this whole thing with his demand for $2,000 relief checks, which Democrats have sided with him on. Unclear what Senate Republicans are going to do, but you can see that the Democratic candidates have seized on this kind of wedge between Trump and some of the Republican Washington politicians here as potential campaign fodder. Let's take a listen to what Jon Ossoff had to say about that.
$600 is a joke, DeKalb County. You send me and Reverend Warnock to the U.S. Senate, we will put money in your pocket because the gas bill is due, the rent's overdue, the credit cards are maxed out. We are hurting through no fault of their own, and you deserve better.
Greg, how are Loeffler and Perdue, how are they playing this issue? How do you think they would vote on $2,000 checks? Is this becoming an important issue on the ground in Georgia?
Yeah, they're playing it very close to the vest because Democrats are trying to seize on this issue to energize their core constituencies these final days of this race. And I asked Senator Loeffler at an event a few days ago where she stood, and she said essentially that she would back the president if there was wasteful spending cut from the overall package. So she kind of gave a split answer there. And Senator David Perdue has not answered any of our questions about where he stands on President Trump's call to give a more generous direct stimulus checks to Georgians. And look, this puts them in a really precarious position because they can't afford to alienate President Trump whatsoever, especially in these final days of the race when the president is heading here on Monday to give them one final push to the polls.
And one of the election fraud allegations and the conspiracy theories floated by the president, but floated by many other Republicans as well, and focused oftentimes on the state of Georgia. Do you think that that has depressed potential turnout on the Republican side? Do you think that that is factoring into this race at all?
Yeah, I mean, it is playing a factor. We won't be sure what type of factor it's playing until after January 5th, because we're seeing lower turnout numbers in Republican-dominated districts, especially in North Georgia. That's where President Trump is visiting, Northwest Georgia, on Monday. So that is a sign of concern for Republicans. But at the same time, we saw similar lags in turnout in November because Republicans have been told for weeks, for years really, about the dangers and the flaws of mail-in votes. And so it's hard to flip that switch right now and encourage them to rely on the absentee ballot system after years of fraudulent claims about false claims about fraud in the mail-in voting system. So they're really hoping that January 5th is a clear and fine sunny weather day in Georgia so that they have a big turnout.
Yeah. And Greg, I saw some reporting that the Democrats were worried they didn't have enough money, which seems insane to me, given the fundraising totals that I've seen coming out of this race. What is most of the advertising focused on? What are the issues that they feel like are sort of central to making the case here in the state? And is there, in fact, any sort of like a fundraising gap here that's ultimately going to be relevant?
Yeah, the Democrats combined to raise more than $200 million over the last 2 months. So that's a staggering amount, record-shattering, shattering every conceivable fundraising record we can think of. But they still say they are being outspent by outside groups. So far, Republican outside groups are outspending Democratic outside groups. So the campaign managers penned a memo the other day, essentially saying that don't let up. to their supporters, keep the grassroots fundraising going. The vast chunk of Democratic candidate John Ossoff's fundraising has come from $5, $10, $20 donations from supporters around the nation. But we're seeing a glut of advertising, more than $500 million worth of TV ads so far, much of it negative ads. Kelly Loeffler just put out a positive ad a few days ago to try to, kind of change the narrative. But most of the, especially on the Republican side, most of the ads have been attack ads against both Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. And
what are the attacks on them that they think are salient?
Well, for Ossoff, it's trying to tie him to China. They're trying to say that because his company accepted $1,000 or so of distribution fees for a documentary that he produced from a Hong Kong-based company that he's in bed with Chinese communists. And for Reverend Warnock, it's bringing up past sermons, past stances he made from the pulpit, and trying to paint him as too radical for Georgia, something that he pushes back against.
Very interesting. Greg, we always really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great work you're doing down there.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Coming up, a leading Saudi women's rights activist and a Chinese journalist reporting on coronavirus, both sentenced to prison in their respective countries. We're going to talk about these important stories when Rising returns.